Okay, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my recap of Marry My Husband, Season 1, Episode 8. So, it opens with Su-min and Min-hwan. They're heading to the water to grab the first flag, and they realize that it's already gone. So, we go to the campsite, and clearly Ji-won is coming down with a cold after being submerged in that water, but Ji-hyuk and Mrs. Yang, unfortunately I kept calling her Mrs. Wang in the previous video, sorry about that. Mrs. Yang, they were congratulating her on being successful in getting the first flag, so she gets to sleep in the camper that night. So they're talking, and she had a flashback of when she played this game before, and she got the fourth flag, which means she ended up in the tent. And so later that night, Min-hwan, drunk, came by and basically was like he couldn't sleep in a sleeping bag, and he wanted to go into the tent. But even in the tent, you would be sleeping in a sleeping bag. Anywho, so she's thinking, okay, so since she got the camper, she has to make sure that Su-min gets number 4 so that she can get the tent, so that when Min-hwan goes to the tent, it's Su-min. Okay, so Ji-won gets up to leave the tent. Of course, Ji-hyuk and Mrs. Yang are like, well, you already won. What do why are you going back out there? And she was basically like, I'm just going to follow the rules, and she's going to continue to play. But in actuality, she wanted to make sure that Su-min gets the fourth flag. But she runs into Mr. Yu, and of course, he's still kind of upset that she risked her life for the flag. And she basically said, she wasn't afraid because she already knows that she's not going to die by drowning. And her biggest fear is that, she's been given the second chance, and that her life is going to turn out exactly the same. And so now they're walking through the woods. So I guess you could try to catch up with Su-min and Min-hwan to see what's up with them. And she ends up telling Mr. Yu that she knows that he took the money that he got from her, and he bought a necklace for Su-min. And so she's assuming that was done to kind of speed up the process of them hooking up. And so her, thing was she just needs to make sure that Su-min gets the fourth flag, and then she needs to make sure that she gets Min-hwan drunk like he was in the past, so that he can go to the tent and possibly they, speed this whole process up. So we flash to Su-min, and she's chasing down the woman that got 4. And so she got her, and she captured the fourth flag. Now, shortly after that, she saw Ji-won walking by with the first flag. So Ji-won was sitting off by herself. Su-min tries to sneak up behind her to rip off her patch, because I guess you have to rip off the patch that's on the back of their jackets or vest in order to win or whatever, or in order to take the flag that they have. And so she sneaks up behind her and tries to rip her patch off, but of course Ji-won has been taking self-defense, and so they end up getting into a little tussle, and she end up tossing Su-min to the ground. And she, walks away. And of course, her being who she is, she felt bad and decided to turn around and go back. And of course, Su-min ends up sneaking behind her, knocking her over, and snatching the patch off her of her vest. So we flash to later on that evening. It's the award ceremony, and you find out where everybody placed. And so, surprisingly, Ji-won was announced to have the first flag. So of course you're kind of confused, and then of course there's this flashback of when that happened. Ji-won didn't take that laying down, and they basically had a face off, and she ended up getting her flag back. So she ended up still, having the number 1 flag. So she got the camper. So of course while she was being awarded, Su-min is sitting there with her face like she was sick. Okay. So after the ceremony, Ji-won goes over to wash her hands, and of course, Su-min follows suit. And eventually, Su-min confronts her and basically was asking her, like, why are you treating me like this? And then had the unmitigated gall to say, you act like I'm a bad person. And Ji-won basically told her, because I don't like you. You seem to feel entitled to everything that I have. And so Su-min was like, well, basically you willingly gave me everything that you had. It's not my fault, or is it my fault that I took it for granted? And so, of course, Ji-hwan was like, you're right. So I'm going to stop. It stops today. And so she basically told her that her and Min-hwan are going to get married and have a family, and that she can't be attached to her forever. And that, thank you for bringing it up first. So, you basically, I didn't have to come to you with it. Thank you. We were able to, for you to bringing it up, and we could this is over and done with. So we really don't have anything else to say to each other. And she walked off. So, of course, she sulked off, and eventually Min-hwan follows behind her. And, of course, they end up hooking up. So, Ji-hwan is standing off in the shadows, and Mr. Yu walks over and basically pulls her away. Because it's one thing to know what's going to happen, it's something completely different to see it happen. And so, of course, she starts to break down, and he basically told her that basically when you're in battle, you can't stop to check your wounds or your opponent's wounds when you're on the mat. You have to come to terms with the fact that you chose to fight, and now you need to focus on winning. And so Ji-hwan was like, well, I chose to fight. So Hyo and Mrs. Yang, they're drunk. So they're, Hyo's always high energy. So she's excited, the competition and the whole team building exercise, they went off without a hitch. Seemed like everybody had a good time. And then, of course, they hear a noise, which we assume is Min-hwan and Su-mi having sex. But Hyo was like, I heard that elks get horny or something out here. And so she was going to go and check it out, and Mrs. Yang kind of pulled her like, girl, let's go. So, of course, the next day, Ji-hwan's coming out of the camper, and she's being confronted by Min-hwan. Basically, well, I bet, it was cozy, warm in there, and you didn't even think about me out here in the cold in the sleeping bag, right? And so she was like, well, I went by your sleeping bag to bring you some warmers, and you weren't there. So, of course, now he got the stuck look on his face, and he was like, oh, I was probably in the bathroom. So, off in the distance, Su-mi is watching Ji-hwan and Min-hwan head off to breakfast, and she's having a flashback of the night before, where after the deed was done, Min-hwan basically told her he wanted her to keep it a secret. So she feels like, okay, she's been used, right? So of course she's angry. So now you see them at breakfast. Ji-hwan is trying to play along. You see Su-mi giving both of them the evil eye, and you see Mr. Yu kind of looking at this whole thing play out, and he just disgusted and just ready for it all to be over. So later that night, Su-mi is at home, and she is basically scratching out all of the photos. Well, she's scratching Ji-hwan out of all of the photos that they have together. So the following morning, Min-hwan is in the gym, and he is so proud of himself that he finally bagged Su-mi. And even one of his homeboy was like, are you crazy? You slept with your best friend, your girlfriend's best friend? Like, how do you think that's going to play out when you go to work? And you kind of see that he never thought about that. So the next day they're at work, and they get the task list for the project. And Su-mi and Min-hwan have been paired up to go to this market to do this promotion for the new kit. And so, of course, it's awkward. So they get to the store, and they're pulling the stuff out of the car to set everything up. And it seemed like everything Su-mi was doing, at least Min-hwan was seeing everything that Su-mi was doing as sexual, like from the way she walked, to the way she did her taste test, to the way she put her hair up in a ponytail. And so eventually they end up in the stock room, and just as they was about to get down with the get down, Min-hwan receives a text saying that there was some type of emergency. So they run out, and one of the customers is having an allergic reaction because one of the meals or something was cooked in peanut oil or something has to do with peanuts. And then they realize that the allergy list that they were supposed to set up, it's still in the trunk. It's still in the car. So customers wasn't properly notified potential allergens in the food. So while this is going on, Ji-hwan is giving her a presentation, and you can see Mrs. Yang and what is his name? Suk-jun, I think it was. He's sitting across from her, and it's like she can't keep her eyes off him. So after the presentation, she kind of catches up with him at the elevator, and she thanks him for giving her, allowing her to be the lead on the project. And he told her that, I didn't just give it to you, you earned it. You've shown yourself to be a capable leader. And he did give her some pointers. He was like, but moving forward, he said, please try to, finish your sentence, because sometimes you have a habit of, trailing off, because she is very soft-spoken and kind of shy and meek and mild. And he said, the second thing is, try to remember when people are critiquing you, try to remember when you're remembering the bad critiques, also remember the good ones. And so she was like, huh? So I guess he was saying that when he gave her the compliment that she was a capable leader, he chose her, because he felt that she would be able to rise to the occasion and do the job. And so she was like, oh, right. So she thanked him, and he got on the elevator, and that was the end of that. So they're at the hospital because Min-hwan and Su-min went to the hospital with the customer who had the allergic reaction, and of course they were very conciliatory, very sorry, and Min-hwan ended up paying for the ambulance, their hospital bill, and he gave them some compensation. And of course Su-min was like, well, I understand you paying for all that, but why the compensation? And so while he was in the process of trying to explain to Su-min how he's flush with cash because his investments are doing so good, a news story comes across basically saying that TKU is a bust and that the CEO fled the country and basically everybody's money is gone. And the CEO is nowhere to be found. So you see him, he's in the supply room at the job, basically telling Su-min that he is going to move forward with marrying Ji-won. So of course feels away. So now he's out to lunch with Ji-won, and he's basically trying to push their marriage date up. So they were supposed to get married the following year, but now that he broke, he's trying to move the timeline up because of course he needs access to her money. So Mr. Yu and Ji-won, they're heading to the dojo, and if you remember in the previous episode that it's at the school. So as they were passing that little area where she used to talk to the cat, she was talking about that they were remembering the cat and how she used to feed the cat, and she was like, one day the cat was gone. And so we did the flashback of, remember when he ran to save the cat, and I thought that he was actually killed. In that flashback, he wasn't injured, and nor was the cat injured. He was injured. He had torn his Achilles heel, something like that, but obviously he wasn't killed. And so they're talking, and she's finally realized, he's telling her that the yellow cat in his apartment is the actual cat. And so they're now back at his apartment, and she's just playing with the cat, and she's just so happy, right? And they're talking, and she's going on about her plan, and she's like, unfortunately, my plan is going to require me to at least get engaged to Min-hwan. And so, of course, she talked about, the first time he proposed to her, how crazy and ratchet it was. But this time, you could tell that Mr. Yu, that the people helped out, and it was a very nice engagement party. And he presented the ring, and she's faking the funk. And of course, you look over and you see Su-min, and she basically says that this wedding is never going to happen. And that is pretty much how this episode ends. So I'm going to end that here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.